From George Washington University's Marvin Center in Washington, D.C., the home of the Radio History Society exhibit, we bring you a special edition of the Big Broadcast. And welcome, everybody. My name is Ed Walker. We are surrounded, thank you very much. Not used to that. We're going to have a little bit different program tonight. We're going to cancel some of the early shows, and we'll try to get Gunsmoke in a little bit later. But today we have a very special broadcast, as we did back in 95, on the 75th anniversary of radio. We have a panel of experts, Washington premier broadcasters. To my right is Frank Harden, the man who's honored very proficiently here in this exhibit. You'll see a lot of pictures of Frank. And to my left is Len Deibert, the former news director for WMAL. And down the table is John Lyon, my former partner on radio, and then Bill Mayhugh, my former partner on television. You notice they're all former partners. I don't know what happened there, but only they know the answer to that. But anyway, we're here, and we hope we're going to have a lot of fun. And let me just say, I can start off, guys, by telling you where I first met all of you, right after I do our underwriter. Can't forget the commercials. We don't have commercials in public radio, but we have something akin to it. As you know, listeners support WAMU, as does Wonder Book and Video, with old, new, and rare CDs and books. Wonder Book is open every day till 10 p.m. with their two locations, one in Frederick, Maryland, and one in Hagerstown, or you can check them out on the web at wonderbk.com. So much for them right now. Okay, now, let's start off by talking about the guys where I met. I'll start with Frank. Frank, first time I met you, and I may have told you this before, I was a college student, and we had classes at Channel 7 up in the old Ice Palace. And I got to class early one day, and they said, well, you can sit in the studio before class, but you've got to be very quiet because the announcer is doing commercials for a newscast on the network. So the first time I met Frank, he was doing the Edward P. Morgan news show for the AFL-CIO.
That was on ABC, that's right.
That's right. That's the first time I met Frank. Len, I think the first time I met you was when I was working at WMAL, and I know that you had been both at radio and television. Is that right?
Right, that's correct.
You're the news director up there, and you made WMAL the leading news station in the nation's capital, and it still maintains that, but you won all sorts of awards in the broadcast.
Well, I would say that Harden and Weaver made WMAL the leading station.
Yeah, it stayed on the air in spite of them. And John Lyon, I met when I came to WMAL, and I never realized that someday we'll be partners, but I know that we did a show for a little over a year in the evening when nobody heard us, John. We had a lot of fun.
Nobody heard us is right. It's appropriate. Well,
I heard
Bill heard us because he was on his way to work.
Well, we had to, the truth is, Mayhugh would come in and take a nap on the sofa in the lounge. He'd say, call me about 1:45, will you? So we did. Bill, kind of, and he'd go grab a stack of records and play them. That's the other man, Bill Mayhugh, who we also knew from there. And Bill and I did a show on, it's no longer called NET, but it was a show called All About Music. Bill knows every musician in town. He called in all the chips, and we got people to appear on the show.
We had a good time, didn't we?
Yes, we did. We
did 104 shows, and it was seen in 60 cities around the country, and Ed and I didn't do a darn thing, but we did it with a lot of style.
That's right. But it's wonderful to have all you guys here and renew old acquaintances, and I just thought we'd talk about some of your memories as to what it was like in the old days of broadcasting. And Frank, before we do that, we have a little presentation. Frank, as you know, just celebrated his 50th year at WMAL. He retired after 50 years at WMAL. Today, people are lucky if they can stay 50 days at a radio station.
You're right.
The guy just couldn't. I think we owe Frank a round of applause.
Thank you.
And the Radio History Society and the George Washington Media, how we say it right, Ken? Media and Communications Center have got this for you, Frank. This is in honor of your 50 years at WMAL.
Well, thank you.
This is yours.
Much. I really do appreciate it.
I hope that
thank you very much.
Fill in a hole in your wall at home or something. But it honors Frank for his longevity here at WMAL. Len, when did you become news director at WMAL?
The second time around in 1979. But I must say the greatest joy I've ever had professionally was working with Harden and Weaver when they signed on their show in March of 1960. I was the first newsman in Morning Drive with them, and it was fun. And they, of course, charted the future that many have followed, but they were the pioneers.
You were out at the transmitter.
That's right. That's right.
And then at some point you did something for Channel 7 too, did you?
That's right. I worked on the television side as well, but radio is great because it's obviously theater of the mind, and I just want to say to the live audience and your radio audience that the people you see here this afternoon or evening are as genuine off the air as they are on the air, and that's what I think distinguishes their qualities as human beings. There's a great sense of civility and humanity among this group, and I have had a great pleasure to work with them over the years, and that includes you, of course.
Thank you, Len. I agree. I think that we were maybe competitors, but it was a very loyal fraternity, and I know Frank has been president of our union many, many times, and he can attest to the fact that we had some wonderful union meetings up on the upper room at the Roma. Remember that, Frank?
Certainly. The upper room is a very, very nice way to put it, yes.
John Lyon is an import from Peoria. Is that right? Are you from Chicago or Peoria?
No, well, I was born in Peoria, and I grew up in Chicago, went to high school in the Chicago area. But I was born in Peoria, and I spent 3 years at a wonderful station there before I came here in 1967. And I worked for the Evening Star group of stations, which was Channel 7 MAL radio in those days, and MAL FM back in those days. So I truly got a chance to do every possible thing you could do for the stations. Everything from working, how many remember Claire and Coco on television?
Oh, sure.
Well, I even did that show. And sitting in for the weatherman and being a booth announcer, and it was a wonderful place to work. And I think, Eddie, what you said before, what Len actually said about the quality of the people we've worked with over the years, I get a feeling that many of the guys were hired because of that. Not so much because they knew so much about radio or broadcasting or music or whatever, but because they were good guys. We had a wonderful general manager and program director who could recognize that in the people,
That's right.
And he hired. They were just the right people.
Well, they had personality radio in those days, and they seem to be getting away from that, other than Howard Stern and a couple of other people. Bill Mayhugh is a native Washingtonian, which I think is something to be proud of, Bill. You grew up in the city, right?
I am very proud of it. No matter where I go in the world, if somebody says, and I live in Fairfax City now, somebody says, where are you from? I say, Washington, D.C. I've never said anything else. I think it's interesting that, in my opinion, radio's changed so drastically. It doesn't seem to be fun for anybody anymore. And we used to have fun in radio.
Oh, we did lots of fun.
Yeah.
Isn't that true?
Yes, it is. It is very true. And because I remember as a kid, that was the one, I had a burning desire to be on the radio. And I don't think if I were a kid now, I'd have that desire, because it isn't the medium that I grew up with. And I listened, when I was a kid, I used to listen to these dance band remotes and Jack Armstrong and all these wonderful shows.
But wouldn't you gentlemen agree there's a meanness about the broadcast industry today that didn't exist? I worked, well, it's almost 50 years. I started in 49 at WFAX in Falls Church, and I was never out of work, although I got fired 5 times.
I've been there, done that, yes.
But you know, guys, and I think you all would say the same thing about yourselves. I was on the air all those years. I never said the word damn or hell on the radio in my life, and I wouldn't do it today.
You know the way I always felt, and I hope it was reflected in the broadcast that we did, is that as a performer on the radio, you're a guest in someone's home.
Right.
You may or may not know that person. Now, if you were a guest in someone's home, you wouldn't use those words that you said or speak on the subjects that are spoken about on the radio today. And so I've always observed that, and
I think we all did.
I think we all did. And why it's done today, I do not know. I have no idea. I have no interest in the world in people's.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I do know what you mean. It all has to do with the nature of people.
I don't know what you mean.
Well, we'll have a little private discussion off the air. But I think I can agree with Frank, because we worked as a team, Willard and I, before I worked with John and anybody else. But we were, I would say, naughty on the air, but we were never offensive. We didn't insult people. We would make fun of a sponsor, but never of his product. And the guys used to call us and say, "You mad at us?" I said, "What do you mean?" "You did a straight spot last night. We were in a hurry." "No," I said, "we had a time problem." "Well, we're not paying for that kind of spot, you know. We want you to tear us up a little bit."
Right. One time there is in radio what they call, speaking of that, what they call the Harden and Weaver rule. That was It was dubbed that by the Wall Street Journal, by the way. Years ago, I'm sorry about dates. I suffer from the CRS syndrome. I can't remember stuff. But anyway, at a time when someone complained to the Federal Communications Commission that Harden and Weaver were taking untold amounts of time on spots. For the advertisers, excuse me.
I think I remember this.
Yeah. So we were called before the command, actually fined $5,000 for doing that. It was It was quite technical, actually. What was happening was we would take off on a spot. It could vary. It could go in 17 different directions. We'd get back to it. But what we did, we would log it as a 1-minute spot. So they said that was a technical violation, so we got fined. But anyway, we went down to see the members of the commission. And I'll never forget, Quillo, is that his name?
Yeah, James Quillo.
Quillo. The commissioner said, I don't see anything wrong with this. I think you should be commended for it. I think you should get an award for it. But the staff, the technical staff handled that, and so that's the way it was. And the story of the Wall Street Journal the next day referred to it as the new Harden and Weaver rule.
Well, as a result of your experience, Frank, Willard and I heard about this, and we agreed that it wasn't a commercial till you mentioned the sponsor. So we would develop these little situations which could go a couple of minutes, and then you'd mention Eddie Leonard's. And say, whoop, there's your spot right in there.
So I handled that whole thing differently, though. I was on...
You just went 11 minutes.
Yeah.
10 minutes of which was pauses.
That's right.
You could sell spots in the pauses on Mayhugh's.
Frank, you're absolutely right. I used to pause. I mean, I wasn't in any hurry, and if this gentleman and I met and we were sitting there talking, I wouldn't fill it up every second. I'd let him hear what I was saying. But they used to sell, Frank's right, they tried to sell the pauses in my commercials. I did one for Eddie Leonard, and the Portofino restaurant bought the space.
Well, Bill, you have this amazing ability to remember names because you go to a restaurant, you remember the waiter's name, the waitress's name.
Mostly
and
the waitresses.
The waitresses. And you throw that in. I can remember Chris with a K at
the Dancing Crab.
Yeah.
She was tall.
See, he remembers her. She's not here today by any chance, does she know?
Bill is talking about his pauses. Now, when I first came on the station, they would have me fill in. I was the permanent fill-in. And that station never had a summer replacement person like most people do. They had a replacement to do every time slot. So I was shifting around every time slot on the clock. So many times I didn't even know what day it was. But I always knew when I'm filling in for Harden Weaver, and I get in my car early in the morning and I'm kind of groggy, and I'm trying to find 6:30 on the dial. I always knew if I tuned in 6:30 and I didn't hear anything, if there was dead air, I knew I had Mayhew. And I knew I had the right station.
Oh, it was... Len, I want to ask you something. With all the news coverage today, and most recently the story about the Los Angeles TV stations that covered this guy committing suicide the other day, has electronic journalism, gone too far?
A lot of people think so, and what is driving it? There's so many sources of news today that there weren't in not too distant past, that everybody wants to top everybody. Everybody wants to be more aggressive. Everybody wants to have something flashier or more sensational. And that gets back to a point that was raised earlier that I'd like to tie into the serving the community, which these gentlemen did in a variety of ways over the years. I think with the conglomerates, which now own so many radio stations in one market, you no longer have the local ownership that has a commitment to serve that community. Now, I'm reflecting probably on the glory days or the golden days of radio, but I think when you had local ownership, whether it was the Evening Star, at some point the people who owned the Evening Star Broadcasting Company had to go face their compatriots, whether it was in church, whether it was in a civic club or the country club or whatever, and they were somewhat accountable for what was on their air.
Absolutely.
And as a consequence today, with huge corporations that own so many stations, what local tie do they have? What field do they have for serving the community? And I think there is an attitude today that is driven by management for ratings that is nasty, sometimes obscene.
Most of the stations in this town, Ken, you can help me, are owned by 2 or 3 massive corporations. Chancellor and who is it? Viacom?
Infinity.
Viacom, Chancellor,
And
CBS.
CBS, yeah. And one thing I remember, Len, that MAL did such a masterful job. I was coming home from another job back in, I think it was 1981, and the cab driver had a radio on. It was the day of the Air Florida crash. And Captain Dan was our traffic reporter. He happened to be at the hangar out there getting ready to go up for his afternoon traffic reports. And he was the first, as I recall, the first station to cover that on the scene. Of course, we didn't see it happen. We didn't see the crash, which is probably just as good. But I thought you made use of a guy who had to be there at the right time at the right place.
Exactly.
Yeah.
He hopped in his car because he was grounded because it was snowing. Remember?
That's it.
And he sped down to the median strip, hopped out of his car, and ran to the bank of the river in one of the most memorable descriptions of a real tragedy. And I guess this is a memorable moment in radio because it to me signifies what the theater of the mind can create. Dan started out, his heart was pumping, the adrenaline was flowing, he was very excited. And then when the enormity of this event began to dawn on him in the middle of his live coverage, you could hear his tone of voice change. And only moments later, this was a man who was sad, shocked by what he saw with his plane in the river. So just by the tone of a voice, that's the power of radio. And these guys, I didn't do commercials, but I'll tell you, when Bill or John or Frank went on the air, or you did for a client, you could sell for that client with your voice.
Yeah, that's, fellas, I hope you'll agree with me on that's the trouble with today. They got kids reading cue cards, and they don't use the gray matter that they've got to be personalities. The owners don't seem to want the personalities. They just want you to read prescribed lines, and that makes a difference. You lose that versatility.
Well, Eddie, in my humble opinion, the thing with this one company owning 6 or 7 radio stations, they really only need one manager. They need one sales manager. They need one chief engineer to run all 6 of them in the town. Everything's syndicated. You turn on WMAL now, and I'll only say that one because I'm more familiar with that. You got Rush Limbaugh twice a day, Dr. Laura once or twice a day. Then you got Mike Reagan, is that his name?
Yeah, overnight.
In the evening, and there is nobody to do any news reports if anything happens.
Yeah, that's true. What would ever happen if there was a problem in the middle of the night? That's a very interesting...
You're not supposed to have any problems in the middle of the night, you see. They have to accommodate the newsroom. But, getting back to what you were talking about the ownership, multiple ownership, and so on, and the responsibility and accountability of the ownership. There was a time when you practically had to have a pedigree to get a radio license. Nowadays, I think a convicted felon could get one. So
they probably have.
But anyway, the technology has gone to the point. And there was a time when you broadcast, you got your license, and you had a responsibility to the community. Your license said in the public interest, convenience, and necessity. And so you had to prove every time you renewed your license that you had indeed served those 3 facets.
Very true.
And nowadays, I'd presume you don't have to do it because we used to have certain religious programs. We had to have public service programs. We had all kinds of programs to serve those 3 things. And nowadays, they don't have to do it. And the technology has gotten to the point where I predict by the year 2002, there will be 17 sources of radio programs in the whole United States.
Wow. And they're talking about digital radio coming up,
That's
too.
That's exactly what I'm talking
The 4 of us will be out of work.
That's right.
Well, we're getting started already, just about.
Well, I think it's appropriate that you had to cancel some of your regular features to have us on because we've all been canceled anyway.
But talking
Len,
about...
I just want to mention one thing, what Len was bringing up about today and yesterday in the broadcasting. When we were coming up, when I was coming up, listening to radio in the Midwest back when I was a kid, we had heroes. We had guys that, I want to do that. I want to be like that guy. I want to be on the radio just because I admire this guy and this guy. I don't think that happens anymore. There aren't anybody, people for young people to listen to anymore.
That's right. I remember one day, John, you came down on Sunday morning. We had Dave Garroway on. And I know Dave was an idol of yours. So John came in on his day off to help me do this interview with Garroway. It was a fun time.
Yeah.
Well, that's the other thing. It was fun, and the people who were assembled around this table here, not only, you 4 gentlemen, entertained people as well as informed them.
I think I hear Ken talking. And do we have our man on the line? Is he? Hello there. Hey, Willard.
M-I-C-K-E-Y.
Ladies and gentlemen, my old partner, Willard Scott, is on the line. Willard, we got some of your pals here today. Frank Harden, Len Deibert, Bill Mayhugh, and John Lyon.
Oh, that's terrific. You've got a full house. And, of course, the ace at the bottom of the deck is you.
How'd you say that word, ace?
I think I said that right.
Hey, Willard, what's the weather going to be at the Derby?
Well, I think they're talking for about a 40% chance of thunder showers. I was down there, yesterday. I've done that parade for 17 years. I tell you, it's one of my favorite gigs. And every time I go down there, for the last 5 years anyway, I go down to a place called the Backside. You should excuse the expression. And that's where they have the track, restaurant. And they serve, Frank, you would flip out. They start out with banana pudding, at 3 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then they have every kind of thing you can imagine, homemade sausage and bacon and eggs, and wonderful food. And then the thing of it is, everybody that works the track, the trainers and the owners and the jockeys, they all come in and have early breakfast. And guess who came over, tapped me on the shoulder when I was doing my MAL gig yesterday morning?
I have no idea.
I look up with a beautiful blonde, and she got a long, kind of a braided pigtail. And she says, Willard, I'm Bo Derek. And I fainted.
I don't blame you.
But, I mean, there
You
in
lucky
the morning,
stiff.
I got kissed on both cheeks by Bo Derek. Who could ask for more?
Oh.
Oh, my.
Willard, why is it every time we have a conversation, it always gets around to food? Have you
I'm
not?
talking about women now.
I know, but we.
He's left food. He's on women
He's
now.
on women now. We started out with food, though.
It's awful, isn't it? But I do like to eat, I'm afraid.
Oh, we all do. Yes,
Yeah,
indeed.
but that was fun, and I don't know. I tell you, I'm this is not the one that I would pick necessarily, but the one that I got, I guess the inside word was a horse called Cape Town.
Cape Town.
Are you familiar with that one?
Yeah.
4 legs.
Huh?
Has 4 legs.
It's got 4 legs and loves to eat, so they say it's the first one back at the barn. So then anyway, we'll see what happens. It's what 5:30 this afternoon.
Yeah.
All right, we're kind of asking these guys their memories of. Willard, do you remember probably one of your more embarrassing moments in Washington radio or television?
I guess anytime I wasn't working with you,
Thanks.
I made a fool of myself, and I do very well, thank you. I don't. I was just. I didn't think about that, but it didn't happen here. Remember, you weren't there. I was doing a commercial, and one of the advertising people. I was wearing hair in those days, and one of the advertising people wanted to put a straw hat on me. They weren't sure whether I'd look better with the hat, a la Tom Sawyer, or without that straw hat. So they put the straw hat on me, and the lady said, "No, I don't like that." So she reached and grabbed the straw hat, and a hunk of my hair was in the straw. And you can imagine, I'll tell you, I think the funniest clean story that ever happened to me on the air happened in St. Louis with the Salvation Army at that fabulous railroad station.
Mm-hmm.
And I was there with the Salvation Army people. They collect money every Christmas, and they put a huge tree up in the station. And like Monsanto and Bush, they give, $500,000. They put decorations on the tree with each amount. And school kids send in $1, and stuff like that. But it all raises money for the Salvation Army. And this one lady, just before we went on the air, she said, Willard, she was in the band. She had the little hat with a bonnet, little bonnet with a ribbon. And she said, Willard, she says, would you mention my birthday? I'm 87 today. And I said, well, I sure will. I was getting a little nervous because it was getting near airtime. So we got on the air, and I forgot to mention her birthday. And she taps me on the shoulder just as I start to throw it back to New York. And she says, Willard, you didn't mention my birthday. I said, oh, excuse me. I said, this wonderful lady was celebrating. She's celebrating her 87th birthday. And everybody applauded. She grabbed the mic out of my hand. And you knew you were in trouble. And she says, Willard, I'm the only boozer in the Salvation Army. And she was right. Her name is Ethel Boozer.
Oh, for heaven's sake. That's great. That's great.
And that's one of the... You hear somebody made up, and that's a true story.
That's great.
That was fun.
Remember the story how we first got our first job on radio? Can you relate?
I remember the going over to WINX.
Yeah, and to meet Richard Eaton.
That's right. And when we walked in, it was a rhythm and blues station, I think, at the time.
Yeah.
And this guy was singing on the speaker. The song was "I Ain't in the Mood," and Eddie and I left.
And I got to tell you another story that happened with us. Willard had bought a second-hand, was looking for a car. WINX was at 8th and I Northwest, and there was a used car lot right about a block away. So we went up there. Willard had about, $200-300 to spend on his car?
And this was $99.
$99.
It was like a 39 Plymouth.
And he says to the guy, is it a good car? And he said, look, even if it only ran for a block, it's worth that for the parts. So tell the rest of the story.
Well, the guy turned out to be a prophet, because Eddie and I got in the car and we went half a block and stopped, and Eddie had to push.
I couldn't steer, so I had to push.
I said, Eddie, you push and I'll steer. And so I did that, and we drove it back, and the guy gave us our money back. But I always thought one of the other kind of cute things was that there was not enough light in the studio to see the script. And I asked somebody, this is WRC, and I asked one of the maintenance people if they could put a light in, over the desk so I could read my script. It was dark in there. And they put the light in there over Eddie's desk.
So Willard had to take Braille lessons.
Well, that's another one. Remember, your Braille watch was acting up, and I was about 48 years old, or 45 at the time. And then he says to me, he says, "Can you see the name of this watch?" He says, "I can't tell what the name of the company is. I want to get a new Braille watch." And I said, "Sure, give me the watch." And he handed me the watch, and I held it a little past my nose, then I held it further and further, and I couldn't read the name of the watch. So I had to go out and get a pair of glasses.
Oh, dear.
Anyway, all good stuff, all good stuff.
Well, Willard, we're so happy that you were able to get with us this afternoon. I know you just got back from Kentucky.
Yeah, it's a beautiful place. Louisville's nice all year. A lot of people just go for the Derby. And there's a restaurant down there called Lily's, and if you ever get to town,
Here we go.
What do you weigh, Willard? Well, what do you weigh now?
Well, let's see. I'd lost about 70 pounds, but since I go through these periods, like for instance, from Easter on, because of candy and stuff, I pick up about 10 pounds. I'm about 260 now.
260.
He's been very good about that, though, folks. He really has been. He took off a lot of weight, which helped him with the new knees.
Yeah, new knees is good knees is a good bad news. The knees are great, except every once in a while one of them goes out, and it's kind of embarrassing.
Have you set off the metal detectors at the airport with him?
Well, that's kind of strange because no, in fact, yesterday at the airport, I asked the guy that had the handheld job. I said, "Go up and down my knee and see if you can register anything." And he got a little tiny blurb out of one side, but no, they don't. I don't know what they're made out of.
Willard, I'm holding in my hand for the audience to see one of your Ronald McDonald shoes, and this has got to be, it's about a size. Look at the size of this. Did this come from Tom McCann's, or where did this come from?
Good
Yes,
year.
look at the bottom. It says Tom McCann, and the name of your watch is.
Pass this around, you guys. You want to see this shoe? This is one of the original Ronald McDonald shoes.
Right.
Watch it. You don't know where it's been stepping, so you want to hang on to it too tight.
They look like a platypus lip.
Yeah. We were going to have your bozo costume here, but you know what happened to that.
Yeah, the bozo costume became a ceremonial thing after we drank 2 quarts of beer one night.
He had a bozo burning party. Oh my! Well,
It was fun. I love doing that. I mean, I couldn't do it now. Now you talk about a show. Did any of you guys ever do children's shows? I mean,
Yeah.
I did. I used to do a show called Big Brother Bill on WGAY. And
Big brother.
what are you guys laughing at?
That's the greatest example of miscasting.
Well, let me finish my story, okay? So, remember Jim Chrisman, the salesman?
Sure.
He was
Oh,
at
yeah.
WGAY at the time. John Kluge owned a radio station. and
Right.
I didn't know Mr. Kluge at the time.
Absolutely.
But Willard, they were going to have Big Brother Bill be a cowboy and do the show from in front of the theater on Saturday on Georgia Avenue. So Friday night I went down, got a pair of cowboy boots and a 10-gallon hat, and Chrisman picked me up and drove me over to the theater, and there were about 15, 18 children standing there waiting for Big Brother Bill, who was now going to be Cowboy Bill. He pulls up. I opened the door and stepped out and fell flat on my face in these cowboy boots, and one of the little kids said, "Oh, heck, he ain't no cowboy." and 18 children left. I'm not making that up. It's a true story.
Frank, you said you did a kids show too?
Oh, sure. But I was relating to the story that he just told. At one time, Jackson and I were doing a film shoot down on using Capitol Hill, using the dome of the Capitol as a background. And you know how it is in a film shoot. The talent just stands around.
Yes.
While all the technicians are doing all the work, setting the lighting and everything else. And you're 30 seconds or a minute is the most that you're occupied at any one time. So Jackson and I were standing there, and the school bus pulled up. 2 or 3 kids got out, came over, attracted by the lights and all the activity there. And so I looked there, I said, "How do you do?" I said, "I'm Robert Redford." I said, "This is my associate, Dustin Hoffman." And I said, "You're certainly welcome to watch if you care to." Well, they went back and emptied about 4 or 5 school buses. And a kid said the same thing. "Oh, he ain't Robert Redford."
Oh, John, did you ever do a kids show?
Well, I did. Not for long.
Yeah.
Not for long. I did there used to be a show on Channel 7 here called Claire and Coco.
Oh, yeah, you mentioned that.
And I had to work with that dog. Well, the dog didn't know me from anybody in here, you know. So when Claire wasn't there, you just should have left the dog at home anyway. Well, they said, no, you got to do it because Claire, she's sick, and this is an emergency thing. I was sitting in the TV booth going Channel 7, Washington. That's all I knew how to do back in the day. Oh, you got to get out there and do this, The dog's all ready, and we got the script and stuff, and you run cartoons, and well, I don't know what. Maybe I hadn't bathed, or I got up late, or something. But this dog wouldn't even look at me. Just ran away. So I had I forget how long that show was. It seemed like it was 4 hours long, but I guess it was about 30-minute show. But I spent most of the time looking for the dog, and that was the show. That was the show. Like calling for this dog.
Len, when you're a newsman, I assume you didn't do any kid shows unless you did.
No kid shows.
No kid shows.
But you would think that Frank, having worked with Jackson for so many years, would have known him. And one morning, I'll never forget, they sat side by side at the studio at the transmitter, and Frank dropped his pencil, and he leaned over to pick up his pencil, and he came up laughing out loud. He was just hilariously laughing. And I said to him I was sitting down to do the news, I said, what are you laughing about, Frank? He said, I've worked with Jackson all these years, and this is the first time I realized his feet don't touch the floor.
I remember that. That's wonderful.
First up there.
Yeah.
Well, Willard, you had some experiences. We used to do these appearances when you were doing Bozo and Ronald McDonald, and you'd go to these shopping center openings, and you had your troubles with the kids, too, didn't you?
Well, we opened every shopping center. Actually, that's how Ronald McDonald was born, like a racehorse. It's the so-and-so out of so-and-so. So it really was Ronald out of Bozo, because Bozo did the commercials for McDonald's when they first started here locally. And then we went off the air for obvious reasons, and then they wanted to keep a clown in the business, and so I named him Donald McDonald, and they changed it to Ronald, and so that was the rest of it, the rest of the story. But one of the things that I remember tore me up anyway at the time. One of the shopping centers out off of Peace Cross, and I went out there one Saturday to do that. I got $35 a pop, and I thought that was big money. I was in tall cotton making $35 for an hour's worth of work.
Have helped buy your farm, no?
Oh, that helped. But that would have bought that Plymouth. That Plymouth. But I was out there, and the guy that owned the shopping center was so proud of his new shopping center, and he had a younger wife and a very attractive little boy about 7 years old. And I was being introduced to the boy, and he was very excited, and the wife was smiling, pretty woman. And the little kid kept pulling at my, tugging at Superman's cape, and he said, "Guess what, Bozo?" And I said, "What's that, young fella?" He says, "My mommy says when my daddy dies, this will all be mine."
Okay.
From the mouths of babes, huh? Oh, man.
That's a true story, too. That's a wonderful thing, yeah.
Oh, man. Willard, listen, I want to thank you so much for giving me a little bit of your time this afternoon.
Well, I'm not doing much. I'm just, out here hustling a little bit. And it's a wet weekend. I hope, the Gold Cup up here, and then you've got the Winchester Parade, which is lovely. I think it's over now, and I think they did okay. And Al Roker was the Grand Marshal.
Oh, you were that several times, weren't you?
You know what they do? If somebody fails to show up, I'm on their short list.
Hey, well, you plugged your Strawberry Festival while we got you on the air.
Oh, yeah. Well, I was just going to say 90% of the things that I've ever had that have been successful have come about because nobody else showed up. I mean, I don't know, how many auditions did you guys ever win? I know Frank won the one. You had one on that radio with, what's his name, the news guy.
Yeah.
You won that. That thing lasted 30 years.
Yeah.
17 years, to be exact.
Isn't that something?
That's something.
What was his name?
Willard, are
I'm
you
sorry.
still driving around the county on your day off selling eggs?
No, the chicken that I had.
He burned out. What's that?
Remember that old one-liner says it was a windy day and the chicken laid the same egg 4 times.
So well, let's
The only dirty chicken joke I know.
tell us about the Mary Strawberry Festival, which
Oh,
is
that's right. It's the 23rd and 24th of May. That's a weekend, of course, my Memorial Day weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And it's up here at Sky Meadow State Park. And it really is an awful lot of fun. And we have bluegrass music and the greatest MC in the world, Edward Heston Walker, will be here. Remember Chuck E. Roast, your host with the mouse from
Yeah.
West Radio in Ocean City?
That's right, Ace.
That's almost as exciting as having Chuck E. Wonder where Chuck E. Let's make it a thing of the radio club to find Chuck E. Roast.
Chuck
Whatever
Roast.
happened to Chuck E. Roast. Remember that station at Ocean City?
It was called WETT, and there's a sign outside of town that says "Get Wet in Ocean City." It says,
And it was the only station you could hear on the beach really loud, and every radio, it was every disc jockey's dream. Every radio on the beach was tuned into wet radio.
Chuck.
Let's find Chucky.
Chuck Roast, if you're out there, let us hear from you.
Yeah, call us. Anyway, the Strawberry Festival is at the State Park. It's at Route 50 and 17 up here in Old Virginia, up near Upperville. And just go on out Route 50, come out 66, then turn off 17, Delaplane Interchange. And it's about 5-6 miles off the 66. It's Saturday and Sunday, 23rd, 24th. It really is nice, and we have all sorts of pony rides, typical stuff for a fair. And then there are lots of crafts. They've got a whole bunch of very, very talented craftspeople.
It's a lovely thing. I've been up there the last couple of years. It's a great day, family day, so come on out.
Yeah, it's a real family day. They have gospel, and they've got, I think, barbershop. I know they have barbershop. That's your group. And then they have, of course, bluegrass.
Yeah.
Well, have fun. What are you going to do? You stay on the rest of the hour or what?
We're going to finish up the rest. You stay on if you want to, but...
Oh, that's okay. I don't want to get too... You guys, you got other things to talk about, I'm sure. But I'm glad you let me on. Everything's lovely down here.
I appreciate you joining us.
Well, I love being with my friends, too. That's awful nice. And really great to hear all of you again. And one of these days, Frank and I, we keep saying we're going to have lunch. Cause
that's right.
I love Frank was the first guy. Frank and Jack were the first two people that I ever met as I came out of NBC in 1959 or... Wait a minute, I get this right. 1950, September the 16th. I started working as a page.
That's right.
We got to tell the story, Willard, about when Frank and Jack. I think they celebrated their 10th anniversary on the air, and we came up with a little surprise for them that day.
That was at the Mayflower Hotel. I'll never forget it.
I thought Jackson was going to have a heart attack.
She was very pretty.
Yes, she was.
No, wait. That is an art form now. You people are laughing. It's not that one. Belly dancing has now become an art form.
Yeah.
And I think it was a very, the only classy part of the show that morning was at that point when, wasn't Sammy Farrow, who was the orchestra leader we had? Was it
Howard Devron?
Howard Devron. Oh, bless his heart. He just passed away.
Yes, he did.
And they struck up the thing there in Whammo. I mean, she came out of that fur coat. Yeah. That room was electric.
Yeah, we had told Frank and Jack that we were giving them a secretary for the day to handle all their correspondence, and their lost dog announcements, and she came out, and off came that coat, man, and then, the rest was history.
A belly dancer, right?
A belly dancer, that's right. But we got back at Willard. We had him on Channel 7 News that night. And say, here's Willard Scott's girlfriend. We both got it. It was terrible. It was awful.
Hey, talk about getting back. Willard and I, there's a country western disc jockey named Red Shipley.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, I know Red.
And Red...
He's on our station.
Red liked to do interesting things, and he decided that Willard and I should have a cow milking contest at the opening of the Springfield Mall.
I remember that.
Was it a cow or a goat?
No, these were cows.
Cow.
And they brought these cows in. In the big malls they have this, like a pit where the children can run around and play. Well, they put tarps down all over that thing, and Willard and I were supposed to see who could fill up a milk bucket more quickly. Red gave me a dry cow. Not only did he give me a dry cow, he kept putting glasses of ice in my hand and got my hands nice and cold. Willard, you won that thing. We were raising money for the Red Cross or something.
Well, I tell you, that's the... I think the thing, it was about a year later we figured out the tarp was for the cows.
Oh, yeah.
I think what you didn't know, Bill, is Willard went by the Giant and bought a gallon of milk before the...
He might have.
Hey, Willard, thanks so much for being with us.
Oh, you all having a good time.
Hey, well, one more thing before you go. This is another Willard story.
All right.
And the only one I have, because I've only met Willard one time. It was I think back in 1967, when you guys were doing the show up at WRC, and I came in with somebody, I forget who it was, and they said, here's how you do a radio show. And Willard's throwing garbage cans all over the studio, and this is the way sound effects were going on. And the day I got, this is a curious note, the day I got fired, in 1990, I got home, and there was a message on my machine from Willard, saying, sorry I got fired, I've never forgotten that. And isn't that nice?
That's a nice gesture.
I don't mean the call, I mean the day I got fired. I've never forgotten that. But I remember that, Will, and I appreciate that.
You're sweet. I remember the next day you went in and put tarps down all over the studio. That's sweet, John. Thank you.
Okay. Well, that's right. That's the kind of guy Willard is. He remembers those things, and that's why everybody loves you, Willie. That's right.
Well, I appreciate all of that, and you all just have a good time, and let's see what happens. Let's see if that sneaker comes in down there at one place or live, like you used to say.
Yeah,
anyway.
yeah. You got a lot of...
Old Cape Town. Let's see what happens.
Okay.
It's a sleeper if it makes it.
All right. I'm with you, kid.
Have fun.
All right, take it easy. Willard Scott, ladies and gentlemen. This is a very special edition of the big broadcast from George Washington University's Marvin Center. And I want you guys to put on your thinking caps now and think of probably one of the more embarrassing situations that have happened to you. And you people in the audience, get your questions ready. First of all, I want to remind everybody, this is listener-supported 88.5 FM WAMU in Washington, your NPR news station. And as you know, listeners support WAMU, as does Wonder Book and Video, with 700,000 old and new books, videos, and CDs. Wonder Book is open until 10 p.m. every night, and they're located in Hagerstown, Maryland, and in Frederick, Maryland, and on the website at wonderbk.com.
Eddie, you ought to get into the radio business.
I've thought about it.
Golly.
Okay, who wants to go first with one of their more embarrassing situations?
I'm not sure I could repeat the one.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one, though, that was, you're talking about goofs, about what do you call on the air. One time I was doing the Edward P. Morgan program on ABC every night, 7 o'clock in the evening. And one night, the late Ed Morgan was kind of an old maid when it came to broadcasting. I mean, everything had to be exactly right. And so he was in New York, and I was in Washington. His secretary was on the phone with Ed in New York, and they were trying to decide on the origination credit, whether they should say he's in New York or just forget it, or what he's doing in New York, that kind of thing. And it came right up until time. As you recall, it was sponsored by the AFL-CIO, and my opening line was 13.5 million Americans bring you Edward P. Morgan and the news. And so I still didn't have, now speaking from New York, am I supposed to say that or not? So I'm waiting for a signal from the secretary. She never gives me one. By this time, I'm a little confused. So go on the air and I say, 13.5 Americans bring you Edward P. Morgan. Well, the whole ABC network.
Oh, my. Well, Len, did you ever blow a news story or something?
Yeah, I could not continue one morning when I was doing the news on Harden and Weaver. Frank sat to Jackson's left, and Jackson usually, or one of them got up, and I sat down in their chair. And I said, I'll be back with more news after this word from Jackson Weaver. And he was seated right next to me, and he turned and he said, hello. That was it. He wouldn't say another word. I just cracked up.
Eddie, the first time I ever worked television, I'd been at WFAX in Falls Church, went to GAY in Silver Spring, stayed 2 years, got fired, was doing the morning show at PIK, and was hired at Channel 5 Dumont Television by a man named Walter Compton.
Oh, yeah.
And I was doing the morning show 5 days a week, 6 to 10. I was playing drums 5 nights a week at the Charles Hotel at 14th and R Street. And Walter Compton asked me if I'd like to work Saturday and Sunday nights as the booth announcer. And I had never, ever been on television. And Sunday night, my first night in the booth, I did a show called the Georgetown Forum of the Air, and the host was Frank Blair. And I'm sitting in the booth, and you wear a set of phones, and out in the studio are 2 or 3 cameramen who can speak into a microphone which comes into your ear. And there's a director, and the director says, go to black, go to the slide, cue the announcer. Now that's when I'm supposed to say, welcome to the Georgetown Forum of the Air. Your host is Frank Blair. His guests are so-and-so. And I say, the subject tonight will be the churches on the border of Germany. And somebody in the studio says into his microphone, who gives a? I won't finish what he said, but... Well, I still had more to read, and it just startled the daylights out of me.
I tell you, Ed, you know what? My first attempt at reading a commercial on radio was at WSAV in Savannah, Georgia in 1944. And the sponsor, I must have rehearsed it 33 times, or more. But the sponsor was Stewart's Juvenile Shoe Store.
Say that 3 times. Oh.
And furthermore, aside from the nature of the sponsor, the copywriter had to be very, very cute with the copy. And the tagline was, send the kids back to school in shoes that fit from Stewart's Juvenile Shoe Store.
Oh, man.
If I said the wrong word once, I must have said 15 times. And I didn't have sense enough just to let it go. I had to back up, plow through it again, you know. It was just terrible. It was awful. I thought that was the end of a very short career, yes.
So embarrassing. John, you're awfully quiet. You've never made any mistakes, I
The
take it.
things that we do when we're young. This happened in 1965. I was in Peoria, WMBD, AM/FM television. Terrific place to work because most of the people who'd been there on the air had been there for years. Like they'd been there 40 years. They're well known, obviously. So a good place to learn the business. Well, part of my duties was to do an afternoon weather program. Well, this weather program was done outside on the street. We called it the Blatz Weather Window. It was sponsored by the Blatz Brewing Company.
Oh, yeah.
They also brewed Pabst Blue Ribbon. I got a case of Blatz for Christmas every year. So I had a East Coast on the west, and the West Coast on the east. And you can't see below the map. It's transparent. Below it's just like a board with the word Blatz on it. He bet me that I wouldn't do it in my boxer shorts one day. Now, believe me, I'm wearing a shirt and tie and coat on top. So I thought, I'm going to get this guy. So, of course, the audience, television can't see anything except my shirt and tie and the upper part of my torso, and I'm writing on the map. Well, I don't know if he had somebody do this or it was an act of nature or what. Well, I'm out there doing my thing on the old Blatz weather window, and I get to about Pittsburgh with this cold front, and the wind comes up and blows the map over. Now, the director didn't know this was going to happen, and he didn't know what was going on. We hadn't told him. Because after the show was going to be a big laugh, I'm going to walk into the control room in my boxers, and he said, and expect him to say, "Well, I don't believe you did that." Well, now he knows I did that. And so does most of the market in Peoria. But that was more embarrassing. That was more fun, I think, than anything else.
Okay, now it's time to get a little audience response here. If anybody has a question, put your hand up, and Ken will take your order with our wandering microphone. And while he's looking, I'll just tell you, I had a few embarrassing things, but one of the most embarrassing things I remember was WRC used to carry the World Series in the fall. It was right when the new cars came out, and the game went extra innings one day, and people were always calling me, and you had to give car dealers at least 10 minutes protection because we had so many of them.
In those days.
In those days, yeah. And we talked about the 65 Chrysler. Be sure to see it at your nearby Rambler dealer, I said. So I got my cars mixed up. Oops. Who's got a question out there? And give us your name and your question.
Hi, my name is Montrese Hamilton, and my question is this. The FCC is discussing micro-broadcasting and the idea of low-frequency broadcasting, about a mile radius perhaps. And I was wondering if that's approved and the radio airwaves are kind of back in the hands of the little person, what would you like to see for broadcasting content, and do you think you'd be lured back behind the microphone?
Yeah, we'd start up our own little station, wouldn't we, guys, and do our kind of music and stuff. I don't know the ins and outs of that. Len, do you know much about that? They're low-power neighborhood-type stations, I think.
That's all I know, really. But I think to be successful, you have to serve the local constituency. You have to serve the local audience. I think they're possible.
They have some of those anyway, don't they, now, like for the traffic,
right.
A drive.
Same idea, I think. Right?
Same idea.
Mayhew's on one on Sundays now.
Who is?
One of those neighborhoods.
Mayhew's got a show on me.
You can hear his program by sticking your head out the car window better than you can.
It's a darn good show, though. I'm sorry you're missing it. I'd like to answer that,
Go ahead.
query. I don't know the technical side of any of that sort of thing, but I know that John and I know that Frank and Ed and I and Len would love to be able to sit behind a microphone anywhere and be able to do what we did, we think, rather successfully for many, many years here in Washington. I never, ever went to work unhappy. I swear I didn't.
No.
I can say
look
that,
forward to going to work, and I think Eddie and Frank and John,
Sure.
Absolutely.
we'd all say the same thing. I've got 10,000 albums at home, and I've probably got 200 hours of interviews with celebrities. I'd love to share them with somebody.
Yeah.
I can't find a job in radio in Washington. 54 radio stations, and none of them want me.
I know the feeling. If it weren't for WAMU, I wouldn't have any. I mean, the fact that they like the big broadcast, at least they say they do. Unless you guys know something I don't know. But it's been rather successful, and I enjoy doing it and sharing some of these old radio programs with listeners.
I tell you what I do, Ed. I emceed the Redskin Alumni Annual Golf Outing on Monday, and at the dinner, I said, if you folks want to give me your phone number, 1, 2, 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, I'll call your house and play a record.
With this new technology, you won't have to do that.
Yeah,
It's
computer
good
does.
to the neighborhood.
Okay, anybody else got a question out there? Hello?
Yes.
What's your name?
My name's Dave Martin.
Yes, Dave.
I wonder if anybody would have any memories of a person that worked for WMAL, the sports department. His name was Bill Malone.
Oh, sure.
Oh, sure. Frank, you knew Bill pretty well,
I know
didn't
him
you?
very, very well. Yes, as a matter of fact, Harden Weaver succeeded Bill Malone on the show.
Right.
He had a tragic end on the Jersey Turnpike,
That's
as a matter of fact.
Foggy day, right.
Right.
Can I tell my Bill Malone story? I'll do it very quickly. We used to have, and we all participated in, celebrity baseball games. And one year, Jerry Lewis came here raising money for muscular dystrophy, and we all went over to RFK Stadium to play. Bill Malone was pitching, and I was playing third base, and Phil Crosby was on third. And Jerry had brought Annette Funicello with him, and Pat Boone, and Wyatt Earp, all those people. And I'm playing third base, and they hit a slow grounder to me. I whipped around in my baseball knowledge to make sure I kept Phil Crosby on third base, turned around, threw the ball to first. I hit Bill Malone in the back, and he was kneeling on the mound. Think about that. From third to first, I couldn't get it past the pitchers. He never spoke to me
You know,
again.
that same game, I got to tell you, that same game, Jackson was playing right field. I was playing center field, and Nat Albright was playing left field.
Fantastic.
Now, the thing that we didn't realize when we got into that game was that they were serious. This Hollywood team was serious about playing baseball. We're out there for a few laughs,
Yeah.
you know? And so here comes this long fly out to right field, and Jackson just stands there with both arms dangling beside him, looking up at the ball. And I thought I was going to hit him in the head. And I'm yelling. Everybody in the stands is yelling. Nat Albright comes running over all the way from right field. Guy left field comes running over there, and the ball plops down about 10 feet from Jackson. And the next morning on the air, I told the story, and then I said, just out of curiosity, why did you catch the ball? He said, every baseball game I ever went to, somebody else always caught
Old Nat Albright, you mentioned that we should have him down here one of these days.
I have a Bill Malone story which relates to everybody assembled at this table as well. Bill lived not that far from the transmitter, and he'd always arrive almost by the time he were to go on the air. One morning he didn't show up for 45 minutes, and I had to do the disc jockey work. And I want to tell you something. These gentlemen at this table make it look effortless. It's seamless, it's smooth, it's professional. But the work they do ain't easy, and I congratulate you guys. I really mean that.
Well, thank you.
You know, of all the people we met, I want to get a plug for two guys who are not here and aren't even with us anymore, but of all of the people that I've met in this business, and I think everybody here will agree with me, we meet some fabulous people in our business. We meet some fabulous heroes of ours doing this kind of work in radio. I've met almost everybody I've ever wanted to meet in my life, artists and writers and performers and songwriters and that kind of thing. But two of the most impressive people to me were two guys that I work with. One is Jackson Weaver,
Amen.
and the other was Felix Grant.
Yeah. That's
and
right.
I never met two better gentlemen in this business in my life.
Absolutely.
And I really feel lucky to have to work with them.
They really were. You're absolutely right, and gentlemen all the way. And they're both in their own way. They were different, but I always thought Felix should have been a music professor, a music education or something in one of these schools, because he knew everything about every record.
Well, he had it better. He had a bigger class out there in radio land.
And he was
That's
known, too, a lot further than the parameters of Washington.
That's
I was,
Oh, yeah.
International.
Internationally. In Brazil. I was in, as a matter of fact, last summer, I was in Stockholm, and at a little gathering, and a gentleman came up and said, I've got a tape I'd like for you to listen to. It seems that Felix Grant had done a program with Duke Ellington sometime before. And this guy that I was talking with in Stockholm was the president of the Duke Ellington Society in Stockholm. And he said, oh, we've got lots of Felix Grant tapes. We treasure
Isn't that something?
So here's somebody in Stockholm, and he was, of course, he got the highest honor that a
Brazilian.
country could bestow on a foreign national. Brazil gave him that honor.
For introducing the bossa nova.
Bossa Nova,
to America.
yes.
And I don't think a lot of our listeners realize that Jackson Weaver for years was the voice of Smokey the Bear.
That's right. That's right.
Only you can prevent forest fires. He
was the most amazing thing.
Yeah.
I probably am the luckiest man in the whole world for having had such a long association with him. And I don't think I've ever met a better performer. This guy was without equal.
Right.
He could sit there and he could go into one of his various voice impressions, and he had lots of them, including Smokey Bear and so on.
Yeah.
And by golly, you'd look over at him, he'd begin to look like him. He did, honestly.
I used to tell people there is no Frank Harden. Jackson does the voice.
Oh, man.
I remember once, and we were on Jennifer Street when we moved from the transmitter into 4400 Jennifer Street. You had to take the elevator up, and one morning Jack got stuck in the elevator. Remember, between floors, and we put a microphone down. Remember that, Len?
I remember it.
Dropped the microphone down the shaft.
Yes.
Oh, for heaven's sake. Oh, man, there's so many memories, really. And it's, as you guys all agree, that in those days, the broadcasting business was a joy and something we all look forward to going to work.
You remember when you used to play jokes on each other?
Yeah.
And there was a lot of fun. It really was. Nowadays, it's full of buzzwords and catchphrases, and that's about it. But I'll never forget, you remember Holly Wright?
Yes.
The late Holly Wright.
Yes.
He had a habit of, when he would do a newscast, come at the last second to the newsroom, pick up the copy, and run to the studio. So one time we stapled all the pages together.
What happened?
Oh, it wasn't it.
You remember the other famous Holly Wright story? He had a program on Channel 4 called Today on the Farm. And he got on there one morning and he's reading. So this is the right time of the year to plant your cats. And remember to dig the furrows about 6 feet deep, so forth and so on.
Right.
And he gets through it. Pardon me, ladies and gentlemen, substitute oats wherever I said cats. The key on the typewriter was bad.
Frank, do you remember down on Albemarle Street, Connecticut and Albemarle, the announce booth, the floor was unlevel?
Yes, I do.
Remember that?
Yeah.
And the announcer used to stand at a podium. The disc jockeys were sitting in one place, the engineer was somewhere else, but when you did the thing to the network, you went in that little announce booth, and the floor was not level. So you could creak the door open, and you could take a quarter, and you could put it on the floor, and it would start to roll, or you'd take an empty adhesive tape spool, and that thing would get down at your feet, and you're making this announcement, this thing's going, and you can't lean down and stop it. And somebody told me you guys set somebody's news on fire one time because he had that long sheet of paper and they set the bottom.
That's happened too.
But you used to do mean things like that, Frank.
Mean. Another time we used to broadcast when we were in the old Translux building down at 14th New York Avenue. We used to read live newscasts to the theater down below.
I remember that. Yeah.
It was a Translux theater.
Newsreel.
Newsreel theater.
Yeah.
We played nothing but newsreels, and we used to go on about every time the program was over and read about a minute or a minute and a half of news. And so one time, and usually it was mixed up. Somebody, I'm supposed to do a Translux, you do it, so on. So we got this director. He wasn't even an announcer. He was a director. Said, nobody can do the Translux. It's coming up. Can you do it? We handed him a retyped page from the Encyclopedia Britannica. He got into aardvarks and all that. And then we, of course, all rushed down to the theater to listen to it as he did it. And it started out, and then it got slower and slower. A shuffle of papers, and that was the end of it.
Oh, man. I tell you, those were great days. Lots of practical jokes and everything. And when I first got into television, they knew they couldn't break me up visually. So when you wear these, like, we call them IFBs, the interrupted feedback where you can hear the director and everything. And one day we had on the show, one of our guests was John Houseman, Smith Barney, we are on one of the old-fashioned. He had worked with Orson Welles on the Mercury Theater, and I was having a nice time talking to him. And this is over Channel 7. Then we had a break for commercial. Then we brought in another guest, and Houseman moves over, and he's sitting next to me. He's not saying anything, and we're in the midst of this next interview, and the director says in my ear, Eddie, poke Houseman, will you? I think he died. And it's hard to keep a straight face when they're doing things like that.
I have a story that we did on, this is a trick we played on Felix one night. I was working for Bill, it was a substitute a week for Bill Mayhugh. So I'd come early and pick my records and pick what I was going to play for the night. Well, to say that Felix was a fastidious man is probably an understatement. He was an impeccably fastidious man.
Yes.
He wore a suit every night to the studio when he came to work. Most of us would come like this, or in shorts, or in running, stuff like that. He'd come in his jogging outfit and his radio, Felix would dress in a suit and tie every evening. His hair, not one out of place. I mean, just perfect. Well, he was as fastidious with his recordings as he was. He never played anything from the station. Those were dirty.
Yeah.
He brought his own records from home. He had a fabulous record collection that he donated to one of the universities here in Washington, D.C. It's a wonderful library. That's right, University of and they made a radio station out of it, which is now gone, unfortunately. That's gone. But he would handle his records with, like, if they had those gloves, those surgical gloves back in those days, I'm sure Felix would have had a box of them in his office. So he handled his records, and he was very, tell the engineers to please be careful with his records all the time. Well, he had some rare recordings, needless to say, because people would send him records from all over the world. Rare bossa nova records and special Count Basie things and all these things that he prized and were his pride and joy. So he wanted you to really handle them with care. So I said to the engineer one night, let's see if we can shake Felix up a little bit. Felix, you couldn't shake him up very much. He was very steady. He was like you heard him on the air. He was very rock solid. So I thought this would be kind of fun if we can get him. So this was off the air, and I was preparing to open Bill's program. And I said to the engineer, when Felix comes in to pick up his records, I've got this old beat-up LP that's an old wax thing. We'll drop it on the floor, and I want you to run over it with your chair. We just want to see what Felix will do. Well, he came this close, quarter of an inch from a heart attack when he saw it. You could actually, his hair jumped off his head. And you thought for a moment that he was really going to collapse because one of his recordings had been run over by a chair.
I think that's one of the things that this audience may not know, that we would sit at a microphone like this and the engineer would be separated by 2 pieces of glass from us. And I had an engineer, Bob Allen, work for my show for 17 years. And Dave Sproul, who I just saw walk in here a little bit ago, is one of the terrific engineers at MAL, and they helped to make me sound good, if I ever did sound good.
That was a job, wasn't it?
Oh, man. Still is, Ed.
I know. One story, Stan Karras was going to be here today, but he got sick. And Willard pulled this gag on Stan.
This which hole was he sick on? I don't
Oh, it was like that, huh?
Yeah, right.
Anyway, Stan had a new Cadillac convertible.
Oh,
and he parked it in the NBC parking lot one summer evening. It was a very nice. And he went in the building and left the top down. And Stan went on the air at midnight with his all-night show. Willard did the weather at 11 o'clock, and he sees Karras's car out there, and he says, I got an idea. And they used to have a dressing room for the TV performance. So Willard had a raincoat hanging out there, took the raincoat, held it under the shower, got it soaking wet, and he walked in the control room, dripping wet, and Karras says, and now here's the news brought to you by Oriental. And he looks at this thing, and he cued the engineer to play a record. He runs out in the parking lot, thinking his car. We've never let him forget that.
Well, one time, Bill Mayhugh and Harden Weaver showed up at a shopping center somewhere. I've forgotten where it was now, to do some kind of a thing, and so Bill had a convertible Cadillac. And we went in. It was perfectly good weather, and while we were there, it stormed. It rained. We came out. Remember that? You opened the door, and it looked like the Johnstown flood. Out there.
I had my own carpool.
Yeah, right. You certainly did.
Hey, Bill, tell the story about when you were on all night at the transmitter and you fell asleep one night.
You don't really want me to tell that.
I think that's...
Every morning, I was on midnight to 6 when I first began, and I did the all-night show for almost 30 years. And we all made an agreement that maybe I ought to have 1 hour off out of the 6. So from 4 to 5 o'clock was Broadway showtime. And I'd play a Broadway show. And I would play the soundtrack of Fiddler on the Roof or My Fair Lady or South Pacific or something. Well, I would say, like if Dave was working with me, I'd say, Dave, start it right after the news, and I'm going to go take a nap, and I'll be back about 5 minutes of, or wake me up, or whatever. Now, it was not Dave, and I don't want to identify who it was, but we put this Broadway show on, and I immediately went to sleep, and the engineer immediately went to sleep. And if I'm not mistaken, that thing went in the dead groove at the end. But, you know, the phones were ringing, but in the studio, the phone doesn't make a sound. You know, you just see the light blinking. The engineer's conked out, I'm conked out, and nobody can get anybody's attention. Somebody drove over to the station, to the transmitter, and came in. I don't know who it was.
Somebody called the police or something.
And do you know I didn't get fired for that? I can't believe it. Not Can I tell my Don Rickles story?
Tell your Don Rickles story.
I'll tell this quickly. I was doing a show called Midnight with Mayhugh from the grill room of the Ambassador Hotel. Don Rickles was at the Casino Royal. And all the entertainers would come over to the Ambassador Grill afterward, and I'd talk to them from midnight to 1. So Don comes, and it happens to be the night I brought my mother to the restaurant. My mother's a very religious lady, very serious lady, but she wanted to see her son working midnight to 6. It's the same night Rickles is coming, and Rickles has his mother in town. So he finishes the show at the casino, and he comes over, and we say hello, and I said, very nice to meet you, Mrs. Rickles. Would you like to sit with my mother? So she goes up and sits next to Mrs. Mayhugh in this little booth. And I'm talking to Don, and in his caustic way, he's being Don Rickles, and he says, what the dickens you doing working in a terrible joint like this? And I said, what do you mean? This is one of the best restaurants in town. This is a lovely place, got an Olympic-sized swim. He said, no, this is a joint. Look at those 2 hookers over there. And do you know, my mother went to her grave at age 88, disliking Don Rickles. She really believed it. She thought that's what he meant.
That's another one of my more embarrassing moments. I was on the phone. It was a phone interview. This many years ago. Jerry Vale was in town.
Oh, yeah.
And I was doing this phone interview with Jerry Vale, and you mentioned the Casino Royal, and I kept thinking that Jerry's appearing at the casino. I said, well, Jerry, you know, your shows, how many shows nightly? Fine. And I said, no, Casino Royal has great food and everything. Yeah, he says, I'm sure they do, but I'm at the Lotus.
Speaking of guests, Ed, one time we, Harden and Weaver, had as guests 2 ladies from some organization which was putting on some kind of an affair which had to do with colonial times or something. I don't know what it was. But anyway, the spokesperson came in. She had on a colonial costume, like Martha Washington or someone. I don't know who it was. So, well, they're sitting there. Now we're talking with them on the air, and they're telling about their event and so on. And I said, you're dressed as Martha Washington, and whom are you representing? And she was in her street clothes. She didn't have on a costume. Oh, my eyes.
Terrible. Oh, man. This is so much fun, guys. We've gone over an hour, and I knew we would, but I don't care because we don't have any commercials on public radio anyway. But this has been delight, and we hope we can do this again sometime. And this seems to be a popular feature of the big broadcast to have some of you guys who are definitely part of Washington's radio legacy. All of you are, and this is what the theme of our exhibit is here. We'll be here until the 29th of May. If you have a chance, come on down and see it. It's at George Washington University Marvin Center on the 3rd floor in the Colonnade Gallery. And it's a lot of Washington history, both pictorially and actually some of the old equipment. In fact, we're using some of this old equipment right now, I think, as a matter of fact.
We are some older guys.
Yes, we are old equipment, too. But I want to thank you guys very much for giving up a day off and coming
Our
down.
pleasure.
Yeah,
And
thank you,
the
Ed.
audience, thank you for coming out. I thank our engineers. I thank everybody. And this is Ed Walker. See you again. Oh, boy, wasn't that fun? I enjoyed myself immensely having those 4 friends of mine around a table just talking about old-time radio for a little over an hour. And I hope you enjoyed it, too. Now, if you're in your car or something and weren't able to record this, I'm happy to tell you that WAMU is going to make this hour, just this hour of the show, available on cassette so that you could have a copy of your very own. We can't duplicate the shows that have old radio, per se, on them, but we can do this since it was originated here at WAMU. So if you'd like to have a copy of this cassette, it'd be $10 for non-members of WAMU, $5 for members. And all you have to do is call 202-885-1200 during business hours, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. That's 202-885-1200. Tell them you want the hour roundtable discussion on the big broadcast that aired on May the 10th, Mother's Day, okay? Now, let me remind you that this is listener-supported 88.5 FM, WAMU in Washington. That's your NPR news.